Kenny, what about you?
I don't know. I've been good. I started a new job. The docks down by the lake, headed down there. So I'm like, I get to spend my weekends down with a great view of Lake Michigan and kind of working by myself, which I like.
Stonehenge by around 4,000 years. Not only would it have been built by people separated by vast geological distances, they would have lived in entirely different timescales. Unless the purpose and meaning behind these stones' construction was something that somehow managed to hardwire itself into the minds and ideas of multiple different peoples all over the world, it seems bizarre that such close comparisons could be made. Unlike Stonehenge, however, research into the underwater stones was hampered a little since their exact location is not public knowledge. The discoverer, Professor Hawley, chose to keep the coordinates a secret, which is probably pretty smart. You know, because whenever anything cool is found, there's always some idiot who's like, oh, we should go destroy it because, like, I'm an edgy 16-year-old man and I just hate society. Seriously, if that's you, you're an idiot. Anywho, that's just my boomer talk coming out. But he went on to inform the indigenous people in 2 tribes that lived nearby, mainly because of the possible historical significance to them. But beyond that, the location has been kept from the public at large. Since the land-based stone circles in Europe may not have like too much to offer in terms of explanation for their North American counterparts' construction, it is worth next looking a little closer to home. And luckily, there is another example located a lot closer to the one in Lake Michigan, and this one offers a far more practical use rather than a possible tomb or lunar clock. A similar crop of rocks has been discovered, one that is maybe estimated to have existed around the same time, and that was found in Lake Huron. Although they sat under nearly 3 times the depth of water and they have been better understood and more studied, the thoughts of the experts are that this particular set may be served one more of, like, again, a practical purpose. The layout and formation of these rocks is thought to have been used to assist in hunting large prey, using the impassable rocks to shepherd the animals to bring them to a location where they were easier to kill and then eat. A primitive form of funneling their prey to a location where they could be trapped, overwhelmed, and taken down. And not to mention, if you have a really long spear or an atlatl, I believe it's called, you could always hide behind rocks and throw them, which, you know, considering woolly mammoths had giant tusks that if you got hit by that thing, it was definitely breaking your spine, you might want to stay behind a rock. But even closer to Lake Michigan, in fact, located within, is another location with similar significance. Beaver Island is the largest landmass in the lake and has some stones all of its own that might help us to understand what is going on below the waterline. Here, unlike the watery variant, there is a more clear parallel to Stonehenge. For one thing, these rocks and boulders have at least partially been arranged in something like a circle. In addition to these engravings on them, some have holes bored through them. This leads people to theorize that these may have served somewhat of a practical or ritualistic purpose. While these large boulders haven't been dated at this point, some have suggested that the land underneath them was deliberately burnt with fire in order to clear the area, making it almost certain that they were placed deliberately. However, the best guess to suggest that this is more of a recent construction, it puts it maybe about 1,000 years old or so, but it's recent, right? So while the argument and debates can rage on as to the exact purpose of these various stone circles and rocks, both above and below the waterline, there is one aspect of Lake Michigan's stone locations that points to something that must be true. In the time scale when the rocks were constructed or placed, or however else you want to describe or view it, what is now one of the largest bodies of water in the country was definitely fully above water at this point. The best theories seem to indicate that if the dating of Lake Michigan Stonehenge are even vaguely accurate, they must be from a time between the 2 ice ages where there was no lakes at all, where all the land is now filled with endless tons of water and shipwrecks was not only dry and above ground, but stable and livable enough for society to live, to thrive, to hunt, to eat, and even find a time to create these various carvings and etchings. And it gives a different slant to the usual opinions that people hold onto how the local people and societies function at the time, whether they are for a practical purpose or if they truly represent something of the lunar calendar. They seem to show that there was a lot more knowledge and understanding of the world around them than previously thought. Like, everybody always looks at people from like thousands of years ago and they're like, oh, we're so much more smart now. Not really. The hardware was the same. It's just our software is different now. So despite the ever-present and seemingly universal theory that many of these stone circles are nothing more than pet projects for an unforeseen or unknown alien overlords, some of the more realistic theories seem more likely. For instance, what I would say is even if it was dated between the Ice Age and this land had not been depressed as of yet, those lakes were absolutely going to be frozen during the glacial period. So if for some reason somebody wanted to build that, on the lake because it was just frozen over anyways. As it slowly thawed, the stones may have just sunk slowly into the now almost freezing ice water until finally it all melted and then they just were left on the ground. Well, that's just what I think. But as with everything else in history, it's unlikely, though, that we will ever really come to a full agreement between all the interested parties, and even less likely that we would ever have any way of actually knowing with absolute certainty. But it seems that some of these stone circles served as ceremonial hubs and embodied the prevalent pagan beliefs of people that built them. Had these purposes been explicit in any way, it's hard to imagine that the Reformation would have done anything other than smash them to pieces. So there is always a chance that these were simply testaments to man's seemingly inexhaustible compulsion to make his mark on the world wherever he has been. And in the same primal appreciation for patterns that let us enjoy them to this day, maybe that explains why they weren't torn down during the advent of Christianity through Europe. Either that, or even the ones that were suspicious of their true purpose didn't really care enough to try and tear down multiple tons of granite to prove a point. But this is only really true for the stone circles in Europe, but it doesn't really explain Lake Michigan. So when it comes to the stones in Lake Michigan, it really does seem to be anyone's guess as to their true purpose and their nature. Little to nothing is known about the people that have constructed them. Even the nearby stones and their alleged practical purpose of assisting while hunting, while plausible, can only ever really remain a theory. The stone circle on Beaver Island, while interesting in its own right, seems to have been from a time closer to ours than when the Lake Michigan Stonehenge was constructed. The secrecy surrounding the exact location of the underwater Stonehenge may be one born out of a need to preserve history and a way to protect something still existing in our world from a bygone era. But it serves to do little more than just confound curious minds even more. And Mark Hawley is one of the first to admit that the relative secrecy around these stones has led to a lot of either incorrect or incomplete information about them out there. Like, people are just basically making things up. So he's not too fond of the comparisons to Stonehenge, pointing out that it's not really the same size because they're far smaller than like the massive slabs in England, but they kind of also lack the same layout, the hinge portion. But while it may be easy to connect the idea of standing stones with the underwater discovery, the man who's responsible for the find himself seemed to think that they are something all of their own, and many of the theories and ideas that the general public have applied to them aren't really relevant. People hear underwater Stonehenge or Lake Michigan Stonehenge and go immediately to the theories we've discussed previously. Thoughts of lunar calendars and ceremonies, aliens building them underwater, aliens having humans build them underwater, humans drowning, building them underwater, all those things. But ideas of grand, like also final resting places. But he seems to think that this construction is something else, like entirely something on its own. And who's to say what the right call really is? I think it's mine. I think I have the right call. But maybe if it were open and accessible to the public, then recreational divers and amateur archaeologists could work together to piece together more facts about the strange relic in the lake. Or maybe somebody could just glue their hands to Stonehenge or Lake Michigan Stonehenge. But it's more likely they would just be damaged beyond repair by souvenir hunters, and those willing to damage something that has survived millennia just to take a piece of it home with them are complete jackasses. Remember that. So there are plenty of theories to pick and choose from when it comes to nature and the purpose of these underwater stones. Were they rudimentary lunar calendars? Possibly. It would imply that 9,000 years ago, there were people who were conscious enough of the movement of the planets, stars, and moons to construct something like that. And it would be difficult to marry up with some of the more conventional stone circles that seem to fit the bill a little neater, but it is still possible. Do they serve a practical purpose, like hunting aids nearby? Again, that is a possibility. Given the time that has passed and the changes not only in the world that we inhabit at large, but in the physical location, there is every chance that the landscape look completely different, and there are some glaring obvious advantages to having nearly a mile of stone lined up, but we just can't be sure. Or is it something far simpler?
So that's a cool thing that's been going on, or a big shift that for me that's been happening that feels like a really good fit to keep us going while we're figuring other things out. Yeah, that's been good. I did have kind of an intense experience. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up or not, but I don't know. I guess this is the place to do it. Where I went on a journey with a friend, and we do it. We've done it many times before, and we have our own like ceremony on how we go about it, and we go deep into music, and we allow music to like expand us and get into our own bodies and our own programs and our own light codes and do work, like that. But after that part of the work of the journey that was more individual. We came like together and we're talking, and I remember he was talking, and then all of a sudden I got slammed with like a warning. It was like a warning shot through my system. I could see like almost a screen in front of me that was like beep beep warning me coming from like my left side. And I was like, well, this is weird and unexpected. I don't know what's going on. And then my friend started talking, and he was going through something pretty intense, where he was like trying to resolve really dark parts of himself and like calling upon like these lighter aspects of himself. But at some point when he was trying to like have this conversation with these two aspects, which he's never done anything like this before. We actually had never encountered anything like this before. So it was kind of like uncharted territory, where he was, that warning system like got turned up, and then I could start hearing his words started, even though I wasn't sure what he was saying, were starting to like feel like energetic blows to me, like they were doing me harm or trying to dominate me in some way. It felt very lizardy. And then
One's at the ready.
Scared, Potter.
You wish.
On the count of 3, cast your charms to disarm your opponent. Only to disarm. We don't want any accidents here. 1, 2.
Inverted statue! Rictus Emperor!
I said disarm only!
Seven Sortia!
Don't move, Potter. I'll get rid of it for you.
Allow me, Professor Snape. Volate Ascendere!
Impera Ivanaska.
What are you playing at?
Whatever he was speaking became a totally different language, and it's definitely serpent-y type language. And it was somehow it like knocked me into like almost like a disassociated, actually 100% a disassociative state, where I found myself like in this room that I was, or a version of myself in this room that was kind of like taking the abuse, like rocking back and forth. And then I was able to soothe that part of myself and then come out of it and then push this entity away.
We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? Well, you don't. But I see through you! What did you just do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea?
Over time, and then it was unsettling experience to say the least. Like, it was like face to face with that really dense energy, and it's uncomfortable and kind of grotesque to be around. So I don't know. The next day was the eclipse. So this was all happening through eclipse energy. And he came over for a ceremony. It was really good. We ended up like talking and resolving everything that happened, and talked about like we can't just be going through that stuff out of nowhere. You need time to prepare before you start calling in things like that. I don't think he knew what he was doing exactly. And then we had this beautiful ceremony afterward, the next day, and let's see what happened then. I remembered your teaching about like expanding your heart, your love for the earth, and then like bringing it down and pushing it to the center of the earth, and then waiting for a return. And I had practiced that when you showed us it a while back, but I think there was something like it revealed to me that I had some sort of program, because I didn't do it again because I was afraid that I wouldn't get I was afraid to give without getting that return and feeling rejected or something like that. But in this moment, I was just like, I don't care. I'm feeling so much love and gratitude and alignment. I'm looking at this eclipse like I'm on the earth. I feel so connected.
Choices and results. The intuitive energetic heart is what people have associated with their inner voice throughout history. From our perspective, the energetic heart communicates a steady stream of intuitive information to the mind and brain, which in most cases we only use a small percentage of, because our ego choices overrides the intuitive suggestion. Access to our heart's intuition varies among people, yet we all have it. As we learn to slow down our mind and attune to our deeper heart feelings, our natural intuitive connection can occur. Intuition is like energetic gold. Intuitive insights often unfold more understanding of ourselves, others, issues, and life than years of accumulated knowledge. That's why the state of coherence is rapidly gaining interest. In this state, more and more people are reporting increased access to their heart's intuitive guidance, realizing it's within them. And with a little practice, it's easier to access than they thought.
So I shot all my love into the earth, waited like 3 seconds, and I opened my eyes, and then 5 hawks just fly over our head right at that moment. And there was 5 of us in the ceremony. And it was, I don't know, it was a beautiful and powerful moment. But yeah, that's some pretty intense stuff that I went through over the eclipse. I'll leave it at that.
Wow, thank you for sharing, Danny, because that was quite powerful. And snake medicine is very interesting. So Danny, because Heather had first started with an intense dream, an intense experience that she's had, and Danny has had an intense experience, and I've had an intense experience. And so it's interesting that we're also dealing with, so on one side, we're talking about butterfly medicine. And on the other side, we're talking about snake medicine. And snake medicine is so potent. And I would say most people would shy away from taking on snake medicine or to learn what snake medicine is. And it is a pathway of the medicine man. It does, when the snake medicine comes up, usually the first couple of times that it comes up, we're not prepared for it. We're not ready for it. And it's an experience that must be experienced to its fullest as it was, because it will bring out the deepest, darkest of our fears. And it's not gentle. This type of a clearing medicine is not a gentle medicine. It's like a bite. It's and it stings, and it's also one that snake medicine wouldn't show up unless you've gone through other type of medicines to help you balance the snake medicine. Because at times, snake medicine can pull us so deep into our deepest fears, it will hold us there and keep us there. And it's like staying on repeat, and it will grab hold of part of your mind for a while. That whole reptilian brain stuff, but it goes real deep until you come to oneness with your own darkness. And we all go through different processes I know at some points in times where I was from various different gurus, teachers, and stuff like that. It was always, you got to just get it out, get that darkness, get it out, and destroy it. When in fact, it's your teaching, it's your teacher. Those are where your true impact to humanity come with. But you have to be able to feel confident within your own connection to the divine essence of all things, and whatever that means to you, to feel confident in your own power, to be able to sit. And this is part of snake medicine in your next ventures that are going to come upon you, is where you'll call up your the dark versions, shall we say, and be able to sit with them in union and communion in a sacred ritual, like in your sacred fires. I really wouldn't do that. I would highly suggest do not do that unless you're in your own sacred, like with all your sacred tools and all of that stuff. Because it's one that is, it's such a transformational energy. Because you see at times, so let's say there's something that comes up and it really angers you, and let's say someone had done something and it really hurt you, and for you being in your heart space and to keep centered, you don't want to project this energy that was projected at you back out to them. You want to be able to maintain your own equilibrium. This is where your dark versions, or your dark energy that we all have, come to go and disperse, dismantle, dissolve whatever that other energy is, whatever that other energy that is stepping on your own sovereignty as a sovereign sacred being. And you see, there's times in our lives where we've all done things where we have hurt other people. As much as we can all come together and we can all talk about how we've all been hurt, at the same time we have to come to an understanding that we have hurt others also, whether intentionally and or unintentionally. but it's happened. And when that has happened, we have fed our darker versions. And this is where that unbalanced karma, in my perspective, where that unbalanced karma is. So if someone projects out to you without you haven't caused anything, rather than just being your wonderful self, and someone decides that they just want to cause chaos, then if we don't stand up to that energy,
I need a writer.
we've accepted that as a karmic that we take on. Again, this is my perspective of what the ancestors have shown me, kind of thing. And so what happens is, where if we don't stand up to a bully, or if we don't stand up to certain energies that are on like loop and they keep repeating over and over, it's because it's trying to say, hey, stand up to this energy. You don't need to carry that energy from someone else as your karma. And this is what the snake, this is part of what the snake energy is all about. And one thing I definitely would suggest is go to see if you can find an elder who would know of another elder, of where you can find snake grease, not bear grease, snake grease. And then you would use that snake grease as your pheromone before going into your sacred ceremony. And the reason for that is because you want this, and it not all ceremonies do you need the snake pheromone in your ceremonies. But if you're really going to start to do this union and communion with the other darker versions of ourselves, this is where you want that snake pheromone. You want that snake energy, and it's almost like putting it's like putting a shield up, and so nothing can penetrate back into that. And so we'll have to do a thing on that when you're ready, when you find the medicine. And then we'll do another thing on, okay, now how do you prepare this medicine to work for you? Because it's not just, okay, I got a vial of this snake grease, and now I'm just going to like rub it all over myself. And wham, bam, there you go. Thank ya. It's like, no, it don't work that way. It's all about our intentions and what's your intention with the medicine. And that's something that you need to be clear on prior to receiving it, so that when you receive it in a good way. You receive it in a sacred way where it hasn't been tampered with, and it's not something that you would share with others. For instance, if Heather wanted to participate in that ceremony with you for snake medicine, then you would get her own snake medicine so that she can use it in her own unique way also. And so that one doesn't imprint onto the other kind of. And it's also, snake medicine is also great for infertility. a lot of people don't actually realize that, but one of the hidden things of why the ancestors used to use snake medicine is, as you know, snakes are very active. They're very sexually active. So it helps for fertility.
Yeah, thanks. That really helps a lot, understanding what was going on. I come to a similar place, not knowing all that, knowing that it was a great and powerful teaching, that it did, even though it was uncomfortable, the way that it felt like it was pushing me, it did help me find this version of myself inside of me that needed to be connected to or reconnected to and heal and work with. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
And there's times where you need them as your warriors, for them to go out and do spiritual battles and not you. See the difference?
Yeah.
And that's where you're not taking on the karma of that, because you're sending in this other version of yourself. And if we don't stand up to those type of energies to ourselves, and you know, this is where we get, where a lot of people will say, look, you know, just turn the other cheek, be the bigger person, be the better person, turn the other cheek. You are of love and light. Don't fight back. Keep yourself in your own little corner and allow yourself to get beaten up, because that's the highest frequency. And you know, it's not that long ago that I was actually told that by someone who I really respected, and was I really thought this person was a lot more on the spiritual path. But this also comes back to the discernment and expectations, my own expectations, and learning to work through that. But what's interesting is when this individual had also had said to me, you know, if you do this or if you do that, I would highly suggest you don't, because then we can't go further with this or that. So meaning either I shut my mouth so that we can continue doing great spiritual things, or walk away, kind of thing. And then in itself, you know, when I sit back and I go, well, could I sit with my daughter and tell my daughter, well, you're getting beaten, turn the other cheek, be the better person, don't say anything, just sit there and take it. Right? What parent would actually say that to their own child? Like a heart-based being. That's not within us to, and that's where distortions are in our different spiritual beliefs and our programming, which also comes back to our deepest fears. And sometimes we're not ready to face our deepest fears. And so we try to put someone else in the corner so that they don't bring up or stir the pot in our own deepest fears. And again, it's more of an unhealed, very toxic, very unhealed manipulation tactic. And for yourself also, Danny, with the snake medicine, when it comes to, there's times where, and just like today, and you know, if I use that as a metaphor and say, well, just with the people that are supposedly running our communities and our governments and all this stuff, well, so are we supposed to just turn the other cheek? Or are we going to stand up and go, hey, not where we have to pick up arms, but individually within our own reality bubbles, where we don't accept their forced distortions of realities into our reality bubble. And then we don't take on their karma, because that's how they release their karma. If we accept it, then we take on their karma. And we have enough of our own karma. We don't need other people's karma in our baskets. I'd prefer to call mine a medicine basket rather than a burden basket.
People needed to figure out what next steps were in terms of whatever boundaries have been transgressed. And it's tough. I think it's tough because we often want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And then in that moment of giving the benefit of the doubt or turning the other cheek or giving people enough room is when the transference of the projection of negativity or the transference of darkness or transference of karma takes place. And it's so hard because, you know, if you've been taught to be peaceful or non-violent or, you know, not to make waves, then you just let shit happen to you, and you don't have to let it happen to you. You know, and I think that's tough. I've been trying to give somebody that I know and I really respect some advice, and like at every point they've just been like, oh, they transgressed this boundary, they transgressed that boundary, they transgressed the other boundary, and I'm like, okay, so at what point do you say no more? And what point do you say, these are my boundaries, you step across another one and I'm done? You know, and it's just so hard, I think, for people, especially, I think it's hard for everybody, but I think especially women of a certain generation are just told, you know, look, you just got to take it, you know, and no, you don't.
I think that the way that our society views boundaries is when someone puts a firm boundary in place, you know, people react like they're being attacked, but it's not that we're attacking anybody by putting up a firm boundary. We're just saying, hey, I'm not going to let you abuse me anymore. This is my boundary. And they're like, but why can't I do this anymore? This isn't fair. You know, and it's become like almost like an expectation for us to let ourselves be walked all over. And so to me, in a situation like that, if you think they're aware of it, or maybe they're unaware of it, you could say, hey, so just so you know, you've been crossing these boundaries. And if you're doing it unintentionally, well, now I'm letting you know that I'm not allowing this anymore. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just letting you know that this is kind of the warning here, you know, so that if you aren't doing it, you know, intentionally, now you can be more intentional with respecting mine. And if you are doing it intentionally, well, then we can no longer have this kind of friendship.
Right. Exactly. And that, you know, and that gives people a lot of room to do right or do wrong, but at least they know what the rules of the dance are. And you know, it comes like, but this is like, you know, it's like discernment, boundaries, like all these things of like holding the line, and holding the line around yourself or holding a line around those you love, you know, with the things that matter to you. You know, it's tough. Because often those are where the tests are.